Are you ready?
It's time to get started. Welcome, everybody. Kurt, if you want on the when you upload this to YouTube, you could start right now. Welcome, everybody, to 10 late spring hacks for camp directors with Sarah, Kurtz, McKinnon, and Jack Schott. And I'm back in the United States. I've been in Spain for the last 3 weeks. I learned how to ride a bike. I knew how to ride a bike, but not that well. Here I am, 500 kilometers later on a bike, ready to talk about spring hacks to get started so we can kick more butt this spring so that the kids have a better time. And it's going to be wild. Kurtz, Lindsay says that I am unhinged, and Lindsay, I am feeling it today, okay? We are ready to rock and roll. Wow. Let's do 10. Kurtz, I think we can do this in a half hour.
What?
Well, yeah, that's a hack. Meeting time.
This is not half an hour presentation.
All right, it's going to be an hour, but I'm going to talk fast. We're going to see if we can get it done a little bit faster for Lindsay because she's got stuff that she's got to get back to. All right, here we go. Kurtz, are you ready?
I mean, am I going to just start with the first hack right now?
Are you ready? We're from the Summer Camp Society. The Summer Camp Society is awesome. In the chat, Lindsay's going to give you a one-sentence description. Lindsay, if you do that, that'd be great. If not, it's okay. I don't
think she can message to everybody, though, because it's in webinar mode.
Well, then if you write it in the chat, Kurtz will read it aloud at some point during this. But we're really excited to have you. And this webinar is brought to you by the idea that we're also doing this awesome thing called the Summer Camp Power Pack. You should look at it while we're talking. 3, 2, 1, Kurtz.
Okay. The first hack that we have is talking about email taming. This time of year, you're going to get so many more emails. You know that. You feel that. Just when I was sitting here waiting for the webinar to start, I got an email that was about a different email that I got, but I didn't respond to. So emails are out of control. So I think one of the first things that you can do as a spring hack is to create some systems around your emails. So the first system that we always like to encourage people to do in the spring is set 3 times a day when you actually work on your emails. Maybe first thing in the morning, like 9 to 9:30, maybe like 1 to 1:30 in the afternoon, and then maybe 4 to 4:30. In the late afternoon. But in order to do this, you have to kind of retrain the people that you're normally emailing with. So what I like camp directors to do in this busy spring season is to actually set an out of office assistant up on your email, even though you're actually in the office. And the out of office assistant can say something like, hey, thanks for contacting the camp, whatever office. It's an extremely busy time of year as we get ready to host kids and staff at camp. I check my emails 3 times a day at 9 a.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. Eastern, and I will respond them if this is an extraordinarily urgent. Call the camp office number. Otherwise, I'll return your email within about 24 hours. So you're kind of resetting expectations on the sender of the email because they automatically get that notice from you that it's in your inbox, but you're not getting to it to a certain time. And it prevents you from feeling like if you don't respond within like a half an hour, it's like bad customer service or someone's going to be bad or there's going to be an emergency that you miss. The other thing that this does is just kind of retrains you from having those interruptions all the time. So if I know that my out of office assistant is up, I'm able to just shut down the email application on my computer or flip over my phone. So I'm not just constantly interrupted and like doing that really bad multitask habit that I always do where I can get 3 minutes of work done, then I send an email, then I can do like a minute and a half of work and then I have to send another email, right? So just kind of turning that off. The other thing with the out of office assistant that can be really useful this time of year is there's probably like 10 questions that you're getting a lot of the time on email. Maybe people are asking about how to sign up for the bus, or maybe people are asking about how to submit their forms. Are there some quick links or things that you can include with bold headers in that out of office where maybe people can answer their own questions just by reading that automatic reply? Emily writes in the chat, are there any specific out of office assistants people recommend? I don't know, Jack, you're the tech guy. I just use the one on my computer. I didn't know there were different ones. I mean, this is just like a text email back, but maybe there's even a better way to do it.
I just set it up through Gmail and I only use Gmail for email at this point. But I'm sure that all the other ones have have a way to do that as well.
Yeah. So it's just like you would say, I'm on vacation. You can write one that's like 500 words long with just, don't write it all in block paragraph because no one's going to read it, but write it with bold headers and bullet points. So if someone emails you about the bus, they can look and see where, the bus bullet point is and maybe answer their own question, which is really, really useful. Okay. What else are we going to do about emails? Jack and I were talking earlier about the standard emails that you send as a camp director, and there's kind of like two buckets for this. So Jack, what are those kind of standard emails that you're going to be sending out every summer?
So the one that I always want to write ahead of time is the template for what I'm going to send to caregivers, right before their kids are going to be at camp. So I'm going to send an email the day before their kids are going to come to camp with, welcome, this is how opening day works, here's a link to whatever, please make sure you have your paperwork in and whatever. So let's write that all now before I get stressed and worry about it, right? And let's do the same thing for the email I'm going to send right after the session of camp. For those, I write them ahead of time and then leave a little spot with like X's that I'm going to fill in with, this is what happened this session, as a little bit of a special bonus. And something that I just talked to Laura about for Stomping Ground that we're going to add this year is in that email, a link to our recurring donation page. So if you're a nonprofit camp, right after kids have been at camp, their caregivers are likely the happiest with camp. And at that point, I want to do one of two things. One is either get them signed up for next year, or two, we're going to do not that this year and instead push them to become recurring donors. And the reason for that for us is we have wait lists this year. We're just really not having a hard time, and I imagine this is true for many folks, I'm hearing this across industry, not having a hard time filling camper spots. And so if that is a little bit less of a priority for us, can I convert my camper families into recurring donors, which then I can build a budget around, knowing that I'm going to bring in, right now we bring in about $2,500 a month in recurring donations. If I could turn that into, I don't know what, like if I could double that, if I could do $5,000 a month, I mean, that's $60,000 a year. That's a full-time staff member that I can then hire, or I can give away more scholarships or whatever the case might be, but I can know it's coming. So how can I increase that? Anyway, we're adding that into our post-session email. Another email that right now is something that's going to be welcoming staff to come into camp. Kurtz, what am I missing?
So the idea with this, though, is like you're going to have to do these before camp anyway, right? But for me, it'd be like, oh my gosh, I have to send that email, Wednesday, and it's Tuesday afternoon, right? And so on Tuesday afternoon, I'm trying to write it all out and I'm freaking out. I'm not in a good writing mood. Anyone else get in good writing moods or bad writing moods? And it's just not the great time to do it. So if I'm in a good writing mood one day this spring, I can write out all of these emails, save them in a file, and I'll remember to include those great things like asking for that recurring donation that Jack is describing. Whereas if I'm writing it Monday morning, 20 minutes before I have to send it out, I'm going to forget about something. It's not going to be as good. So saving those. And then the other kind of group of emails is those emails that you feel like you're writing all the time. So if you're writing emails all the time about like kids camp trading post accounts or something, first of all, trace it back and figure out if there's a problem with the way that you describe the camp trading post, like in your intake paperwork. But if it's just parents always have questions about it, or it's something you use a lot of communications about, having a document with common email sentences or common email paragraphs is really helpful. So I think Anna Hopkins is on the call. She just helped me. We both had the same job this spring, helping teach a negotiations class at the University of Michigan for some online MBA students, which was hilarious when the students figured out that two camp directors were kind of their assistant teachers and graders, but we had 99 students. So we had a batch of grading comments. And so, there was probably like a spectrum of 6 or 7 comments that we used over and over again, just like with emails to caregivers. So instead of writing out that same paragraph 6 different times, we just copied and pasted that paragraph over with some personalizing notes as bookends. So if we can do that as camp directors, we're going to spend a lot of time on composition. The other email hack that I didn't write on our note list, but has always been really important to me, is if an email is going to be more than 6 sentences to write back, it's really a phone call, right? Especially if it's around something controversial. Like, stop staying up till 1 a.m., like composing in your mind that email that you have to send back to that one staff member that wants to take a 3-week vacation from, July 7th to July 28th. Like, just call them and talk on the phone. Don't write back to angry caregivers. So thinking about all emails should be like 2 minutes and done, or a phone call, and thinking about if it is something that's more routine, can I just copy and paste over old text and have that really at hand? I think would be really, really useful. So yeah, I also have, I'll do full disclosure right now, I have 5,736 emails. I know people think I'm organized. Actually, I'm not an inbox zero person. I'm so sorry. So this is hard. I know, Jack is like aghast.
I have 4 emails at the moment, everyone.
Okay, see, I know.
Crushing.
But I know I have 5,736. So if it goes up, like, I do know that I have another.
All right, email taming. It's called the promotions tab. Turn it on in Gmail. It takes all of the random newsletters that you've been getting and puts them into a different tab, so you don't have to actually see them unless you want to. Are we done with emails? I hate emails.
We're done.
They're maybe the most important thing that we do, because it's communication, it's about connection with people, and it's so stressful because there's often too many of them. So email taming, let's try and get it done. Let's do our email instead of look at our email. I think Ruby says that in camp. It's really a popular thing to talk about. All right, let's talk about things that are urgent versus important. I've been seeing this from, it's funny, I've been seeing this from like a bunch of seasonal staff that I've talked to that have been seeing urgent versus important, which is called the Eisenhower matrix, but they've been seeing it on TikTok as something that's recommended. So people in their notebooks, wait, I'm gonna draw this in my notebook too. Just in their notebooks, they do to do, and then make the list. 1 second, Kurtz. And in their notebooks, we'll make a to-do list and then categorize things by what's important, what's not important, what's urgent, and what's not urgent. And if you're anything like me, you spend a lot of time on everything to the right side of that line. So anything in the urgent category, right? And for me, when I don't think about it, I don't spend any time worrying about if things are important or not important. It's just if they're urgent. So if something dings at me, if someone asks me a question, if someone sends me an email, I just am trying to get through the things that are urgent. And when I'm a little bit better, I get up into the important and urgent category. But the goal really is, how can I get things into the important and non-urgent category? How can I get to be doing things that are really important and I don't feel stressful about? So just like what Kurtz was saying about emails, what we're talking about in taming our emails is really trying to move from that non-important urgent category up into the important and urgent category, and eventually over into the important and non-urgent category. So if we write the emails ahead of time, those are important things. That's important communication, but it's not so urgent for us right now. And the reason why I like this this framework is it just takes my stress level about the actual task I'm doing and moves it down a little bit, right? So like when it's urgent, when anything is urgent, it's just like a little bit, like my heart's pumping a little bit faster. I think a little bit less clearly. And so when I can move it into the important non-urgent category, it's better. If you look this up, if you type in Eisenhower framework into Google, you'll see a bunch of articles and things like that. But what they do is there's like 4 Ds. Kurtz, do you remember the 4 Ds for the different categories?
No.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't doing that. Sorry.
The 4 Ds, I'm going to mess this up. I apologize, but they go around from in the top right corner, I believe it's do. Bottom right corner is delegate. Bottom left corner is delete. And the top left corner, I can't remember what it is, but it's another D. And it's like defer. So, because you don't have to do it right away. So the 4 Ds are defer, do, delegate, and delete, starting from the top left corner, going all the way around. And Kurtz,
Well, one thing I think about with this a lot is someone told me as you like increase kind of in the hierarchy of camp leadership, right? You should be thinking further down the road. So someone who's like on the ground, like a junior counselor, first year counselor is literally thinking like 5 minutes or an hour down the road at all times. Like, that's how I was as a first year camp counselor. It was like, what do I need to do like right now or 5 minutes from now? But as you kind of become like a activity director or program director, you're thinking maybe a day down the road, like what's tomorrow's evening program. If you're a program director, maybe you're thinking about what's next week's schedule, right? And as you're a camp director, you should be thinking like 2 weeks down the road or a month down the road or a year down the road or 5 years down the road, right? So the higher you kind of move up in leadership, if you will, if you're going to be kind of that kind of structure at camp, you should really be very much in the important and very much not urgent category, because that's how you're able to have that kind of like long-term planning. So Abigail wrote in the chat about let you know which things you could delegate. And that's what Jack's talking about with like the do, delete, and that sort of stuff. But if you're looking to kind of advance in camp leadership, I like thinking about how much of my time is spent thinking 5 minutes down the road versus like 5 years down the road. And my target is thinking more like 5 or 50 years down the road if I want to become that like executive director, CEO, owner one day.
I love that. I love that, Kurtz. Thank you. Inside of the Eisenhower matrix, there's a lot of decision making that's happening. Kurtz, can you talk a little bit about how you think about decision making and some of the frameworks you've seen from MBAs and business school and being a lot smarter than I am?
Ooh, I like that. Great. So decision making, it's kind of like you have all these, I don't even know where my to-do list went. I feel like I'm a mad scientist today, but on my to-do list, part of the thing where I get like analysis paralysis, right? Some of the things that stick around on my to-do list for so long are because I can't make a decision around it. There's like a famous Harvard Business Review article about like monkeys on someone's back, right? And those are like all the little tasks and things that you have to complete. So thinking about how we can become more efficient at making decisions, especially this time of year, is going to really serve us well. So the first tool that I wanted to share was this kind of like decide once concept. So an example of this from like my home life might be, I've decided once for this whole year that anytime I'm invited to a kid birthday party, I'm just bringing them a gift certificate from our local bookstore, right? Like that's what you get. Like it's good for all age. Sorry, right? Like I just don't have time. I don't have capacity this year to get you something super personalized, right? Like I've decided once I can buy a bunch of those. I can have them in a folder in my house. And I'm not making like 20 different decisions all year about all my nieces and nephews and neighbors or whatever when there's like a kid's birthday party, right? So I was thinking about this like decide once concept in the household and how we can apply it to camp. And a lot of times at camp, we get hung up on decisions because it's really a one-time decision, but we have a million different like things that we could do for it, right? And we get excited, or there's a lot of different possibilities. But a lot of the times we just need to make a decision. So we're already doing this pretty well at camp. Like at our camp, the last meal before checkout on every last Saturday of the session was cinnamon rolls. We decided once, and it kind of becomes a tradition, right? But there's other things we didn't decide once on, and they became kind of burdens or things that moved very quickly from the important but not urgent category to the important, very urgent category. And then they weren't done as well, or they were done under a lot of stress. And a good example of this is staff appreciation events. So a lot of times, like we know that those are important going into the summer, but we didn't decide once of like when they were or what they were going to be. So what if we said right now in the spring that staff appreciation is done on Tuesday and Friday nights, and Tuesday is going to be some sort of food gift, and Friday is going to be some sort of like feel good kind of activity, right? And so now I know what I need to prepare for. Now I know it's on the calendar and I can stop thinking about it. It's like a monkey that's off my back and on paper and just decide it. Jack, did you want to add anything about decide once?
Well, I just think like for me, the way that I think about it now that you're saying that is, can I just like today, can I spend 20 minutes and just decide 5 things once now? They don't have to be perfect, and it's not going to be, we're not setting them in stone. We're not saying like Kurtz, you have to do cinnamon rolls every Friday at the end of the session because it's the way we already decided it. It's like, okay, so if Cisco or whoever your food delivery doesn't bring the right stuff in, you can change, right? Like it's not like set in stone, but can I just right now pick 5 things to decide about? Like, for example, I was thinking for our leadership meetings, can we just start every leadership meeting with a 30-second celebration? And then just do a 30-second celebration at the beginning of every leadership meeting. And then I don't have to come up with a new way to do how do we get to know each other, stuff. It's just like, boom, that's what we do every time. Everyone knows it. We're moving on. Can I just decide 5 of those things right now so that I'm a little bit less stressed going forward?
The other concept that I wanted to talk about in decision making is this idea of being like a maximizer versus a satisficer, which I think is like a made up word combining satisfying and sufficing. But a professor I work with at U of M named Paula Caproni talks about this a lot. Thinking about like what your tendency is as a person. Let's go back to birthday presents. A lot of times I'm a maximizer with gift giving. I like to pick out things that are like specifically really special for people, right? It's something I really enjoy. But no offense, little neighbor kid, like, do I have to pick out something like personally absolutely wonderful for you? Probably not, right? Like I can save the maximizing for the core group of people in my life that I really enjoy doing that for, instead of getting wrapped up in maximizing every single gift giving experience that I have, right? Another example of this would be, for Jack loves night program. Right. And so that's somewhere where he's going to just maximize the heck out of what night program is going to be, how it's going to go, what the setup is. And that's great. That's fine. But the kind of interesting thing or helpful thing about maximizer versus satisficer is figuring out the categories of things that you are doing and what's worth maximizing and things that just need to be kind of satisfied, right? So you can quickly delegate the things that just need to be satisfied. But you can maximize things that are really important to you or to your camp or in your jurisdiction. So some of this is just like breaking the micromanaging habit of like everything has to be, your way or absolutely perfect. I think about my friend Kelly Stearns at Michigania had a baby in, I don't know when it was, I guess it was in August or September. And we had the camp moms talk for Summer Camp Society. So we had all these parents of young children, mostly moms, all moms that day. And Kelly mentioned in a conversation about kind of handing your baby over to a caregiver that it's a little bit of a shift where it's like, yes, you are the best parent or the best person to care for your baby, but that doesn't mean that someone else can't do it well. And I think about that with camp because like in many ways our camps are our babies, right? Like they really are. Like camp was my first child. And I felt like I was the best caregiver for my camp when I was there. And that didn't mean that someone else couldn't care for an element of my camp or my camp as a whole really, really well. So trying to figure out, can I get out of this maximizer mindset and turn into this satisficer mindset gives you a little bit of relief of the pressure of maybe making everything perfect because not everything is worth maximizing.
And our friend Sylvia calls this getting things done minus. It's like, when is it good? And what's good enough? Yeah. And when I think about this at camp, like if I'm gonna lead a like let's say we're doing like a fancy dinner on Thursday night and everyone's gonna get dressed up and come to dinner, right? Like for me, likely I'm gonna do that done minus because I'm just gonna make an announcement at the beginning of the day and say, hey, we're doing fancy dinner that night, and that's about it. Right? That's how I'm going to pull it off because I have too many other things going on. But there's a lot of other people at camp that could probably maximize that and make it way cooler. Right? So like if I'm going to do it done minus, then can I get it off my plate? Can I delegate it to someone who has more excitement around that idea so that they can go done plus on that and they can put out, I don't know, maybe like butcher paper on all the tables so people, it looks like it's whatever. Candles, all the things that people are going to get excited about when I'm not going to. But like for me, I love night programs. So when I delegate night programs, I have more stress than when I sit with the people who are going to actually put them on and spend a lot more time working on it with them, right? So even though neither those are probably of equal value in terms of what's important, it's just what I care about maybe a little bit more, and that's okay. You can just admit, like, you know what? I really care about how this is done, and I'm going to spend more time on it, or it's done minus. Like, I don't care. I'm not going to worry about it. As long as it gets done, it's going to be fine.
And done minus is fine a lot of the time.
Done minus is fine a lot of the time because it's done. Because it's done. It has to be done though.
Yeah, D for done.
It can't be not done minus. It's got to be done minus. And defining
that's just an incomplete. Yeah. The Pareto principle is like a really interesting interpretation of this concept that we're talking about. There's a lot of different ways to think about this principle if you're interested in Googling it and reading more. But the way that I like to think about it is if 20% of the effort gets you 80% of the result, maybe 20% of the effort is okay, right? So a lot of us put in, a lot of us put in 100% of the effort, but the result that we get is only like a little bit incrementally better than that first 20% of effort. So I think some of this principle, the way I think about it is like, when do I stop? I talk with camp directors a lot of the times who are ready to transition to a new role. And they say, well, I feel like, my work isn't done at camp. There's still more to do. Like, well, your work is never really done at camp, right? It's never going to be complete because there's always new people and always new kids. But maybe you've put in, the huge heavy lift in the beginning, and the rest of that 80% of effort is only going to move the needle a little bit on that project or a little bit on that camp or that initiative, and it's just not worth it. So can we pause in a project or even a role and kind of assess where we are and determine if that first sprint is enough? Okay.
And that's some ideas about decision-making. Kurtz, do you have anything else you want to add?
Well, I guess the only other thing about decision-making, and I wrote a blog a little bit about this the other day, and I'll share it in the chat. But a lot of times, like, being a camp director is really, really isolating, right? Like, you're supposed to know all the answers and people come to you with the questions and you're the final decision maker. And there's no one else you can really process stuff with, right? So a lot of times decision making is really burdensome because it's just you in your mind. And if you're at a small camp like I was, you have like you're the only year-round person that really understands like all the factors, and there's no one to think out loud with, right? So finding like a thought partner you can have a scheduled time with every week this spring or even throughout the summer to kind of talk through some of these decisions that you might be struggling with can be really, really helpful. You could hire someone, you could use a board member that you trust, you could have an agreement with another camp director at another camp who understands you in your camp. But what if you just like had a list of things that you were worried about every week, and they helped you figure out like how to place it on the Eisenhower matrix, or maybe what the decision criteria should be for the different items, instead of you just sitting there thinking in your head, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And losing sleep over it. So reaching out and asking for input from someone else who kind of understands your weird role is invaluable.
But Kurtz, I love this, and you're being super modest here and not sharing that this is something that you do for a bunch of camps, where Kurtz is like a coach for camp directors. And I want to think about it like this, like the reality is that most of you on the call on this, most camp directors or the person where like kind of the buck stops at camp are the camp's most valuable resource, and kind of your clear-headed decision-making is the most important thing that camp can do almost all the time, right? And instead of kind of investing in that, a lot of times what we try and do, and we're going to talk about this in a second, is just like save all the money that we can so that we can buy some extra program supplies or whatever. But the reality is, if your stress level, if your decision-making can be a little bit better, it's going to have drastic impacts across your entire camp, right? So what Kurtz does for camps, and other people can do this too. I just happen to love Kurtz, so I would just pay Kurtz now that I know that this is a thing, is Kurtz will sit down with camp directors at this time of year or throughout the year for an hour or whatever, listen, and kind of the shape of the conversation goes kind of like this. Listen to what's going on, and then Kurtz tries to help you build a menu so that you can prioritize what's happening. That thought partnership allows you to be more successful so you can get more done and just either delete things, delegate things, or realize what the priority is. Because the reality is for most of us that when we talk out loud like that and someone reflects back to us what we're thinking about and can kind of like sift through some of that, it can drastically increase our ability to get more done, to be more successful, and to just feel less stressed, right? So I would just email Kurtz and say, Kurtz, will you just help me? And she'll give you a very reasonable response that says, yes, here's how it'll work. So that's what I would do.
And I guess the other thing I would say about decision making is like a lot of times we have decision fatigue or paralysis because there's like some shame associated with what's going on. Like I should know how to do this, or why did this happen to me? And as a young camp director, I had Scott Arizala as a former director of my camp. So he was my coach, and I could call him and say, Scott, I fired 7 people last night. And I was like so ashamed to like say that out loud in any other context. And then Scott could say like, oh yeah, the same thing happened to me in like 2002. And like, here's how it went down and here's how it felt. And it was just like, oh my gosh, what a relief that like someone understands that this job is really hard. And someone understands the complexities of the decisions that I need to make, because like my boss at the regular Y did not understand what it meant to fire people that you lived with, that you'd known since they were 10 years old, you know? So the complexities of camp decision making are so loaded with like emotions and relationships and living spaces and all these other things that 7 staff would be your whole staff. It kind of felt like my whole staff. It was like 10%. Another story for another time. But you know, being able to have another person in your network who can kind of take away that shame and have some understanding around like, yes, wild stuff happens at camp and it wasn't necessarily your fault, helps you make better decisions. Okay.
I love that.
What's next? Oh, it's more than a half an hour. Ha ha ha.
So on this one, time is money. So just like I was saying about like, just like you could hire Kurtz, pay her $1,000 between now and summer to meet once a week. Kurtz, I don't know if you do that exactly how that works. I just assume that something like that works because I know you're awesome. And so let's say you could pay Kurtz $1,000 so you can meet once a week between now and summer and save all that stress time and get more sleep because she's helping sort through those kind of things, right? I think about this at Stomping Ground. We love to pride ourselves on being super scrappy. We like literally built 4 cabins, like me, George, and Dylan, just like outside, just like learning how to do it because we didn't want to pay for it. Right? Like we are so far on the end of the spectrum of like, we can do it ourselves that it's like, it's so ingrained in our culture. And at the same time, as summer approached last summer, I realized that we needed more picnic tables. And so like picnic tables are so easy to build, right? Like I can build them. You can probably build them. There's 1,000 places online to find them. And we had so much going on. Like, can I outsource that? Can I find somebody else that will build the picnic tables for us? And so we just had picnic tables delivered. They cost like $20 more per picnic table than it would have cost us to build them ourselves. And for me, I'm like, I could have just saved. I think we bought like 30 picnic tables. So I could have saved $600, except like I just had picnic tables. I got to make one phone call and then 30 picnic tables got delivered over the next like 3 weeks. And so like, Kurtz likes to talk about being penny wise versus penny wise and pound foolish, right? Like, can we save, instead of trying to save every dollar, it's okay sometimes to say, on my decision-making matrix, I realize this is important and I'm not going to have time to do it well, right? It needs to get done. I can't even get to done minus. So what can I pay for to get this done for, you know, like if it's going to cost less than $500 between now and summer, there's not that many. You can do that a bunch of times to make camp better, right? So spend some money. That's so hard for me to say because I'm such like just like figure it out. You can make it work. But one of the big learnings for me is like spend some money. Just if you can solve it in $50, $100, $500, just do it, get it done and move on.
Well, some of this is like a little bit of a self-respect thing as a camp director too, right? Because your time is worth money, right? And your effort and your stamina and your ability to stay in this job is worth money. So I remember like I was caught at the YMCA at like 8 p.m. photocopying all the campers' health forms by myself in case. This is stupid, but this is truly what I was doing. Like, I was just like, oh, well, instead of paying the registrar to do this, you know, she'd have to have overtime. I'll just stay here until 8 p.m. and copy all these forms by myself. So we have like the emergency backup in case all the internets go down. So I'm like there copying all the forms, but like 4 hours of my time, like that's part of the reason that you burn out as a camp director, right? Like I'm trying to save the Y, like the $200 it would cost to just send that giant PDF to Staples and go pick it up. Instead, I'm doing it on my own, right? So I feel like looking back on that, I wasn't like really respecting my own time because I would have paid someone else a lot of money to do that, right? So also take your time off, take your PTO, otherwise you're volunteering. That's a side note. Next.
Any more?
Oh, hide. I saw a camp director the other day out and about, and he said he still thinks about how I once revealed at a conference that I preferred to take my time off in the Petoskey Library, so the public library in the small town near our camp, because no one would be there and no one could find me, and it was air conditioned and it was a great place to nap on the desk. You just open a magazine in front of your eyes and then just sleep. So no one ever looked for me in the library. But I think this is like a great time of year to hide, right? Writers, when they're writing a book, they might go on like a writing sabbatical where they go to Spain, or I don't know. I don't think you were writing a book. But you know, when writers are trying to kind of do that final push to get their novel out, or when groups of people are, you know, getting ready for something big, they go on a retreat, you know, they go somewhere where they're not going to be disturbed. And I think this is like a really useful technique that camp directors can do. In many ways, preparing for the summer at camp is like a masterpiece, right? You've been putting 9 months plus of work into getting ready for summer, and you kind of need a little retreat, a place where you can not be interrupted to do some deep work on the final things that really matter, right? Every day in the afternoon, can you find the equivalent of the Petoskey Library, put out that out of office assistant and go hide for a few hours and really get some work done, right? Don't let people know where you are. Maybe let someone know where you are. But the fact that no one's like knocking on your door, asking for the keys to the golf cart, or, you know, that you can't hear the phone ringing, even if someone else is answering it, just allows you to have that focus. I don't think it's selfish to find some time to yourself to get some deep work done this time of year. And I encourage everybody to do it. Bobby writes in the chat, hiding days are the only days I get anything done. So hiding days are real. I think it's okay. I think it's great. I think a little hiding snack is great too, right? Like, can you leave for like 2 hours and hide for like a short period of time just to test it out? I think that's awesome. And don't hide at your house. Like, if I'm hiding at my house, the dogs are barking, I've got to flip the laundry over, like I'm not getting anything done, right? Find a place to hide where you can just kind of be uninterrupted.
I love that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, where should I go to hide? Yeah, the library. That's usually where I go.
Kurtz, what about asking for help? Who do I ask? And why do I want to do it?
Lots of interesting research about asking for help. So one of the professors I worked with at U of M, Dr. Wayne Baker, studies help and reciprocity, which are really interesting concepts. Professor Baker has said that 70 to 90% of the help given in the workplace is in response to requests for help. So he says, if you don't ask for what you need, all of the answers and resources that people would gladly share with you are wasted. And he cites a study at Stanford that shows that people underestimate by 50% other people's willingness to help. If I called any of you, I don't even know a lot of you right now, but if I called any of you right now and said, I would love your, I don't know, I would love your take on this new idea, most of you, I think, would actually write back. Or if any of you emailed me later today and said, Kurtz, I desperately need some new icebreaker questions for a retreat I'm leading tomorrow. Do you have anything? I absolutely would write back, right? One of the best ways to kind of cultivate or to do stewardship is actually not doing favors for people or doing nice things for them, but asking people to help you with certain things. Like, I think one of the reasons that people are so invested in Stomping Ground is so many people have been asked to help along the way, right? Like, have been there, like physically building things, or have been asked for monetary donations, or have been asked to spread the word, not because Jack and Laura and the team are like flattering them, but because they've said, we need you, we want you here, we want your help. And that's something that's really generative. So I guess kind of the first point here is to take away the shame around asking for help. It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't know how to do your job or you're incapable. It just means that you're using resources really, really wisely. And what's the worst case scenario if you ask someone for help? The worst case scenario is they say, like, I can't do it, or they like ghost you, right? And then you're just like where you started. And the other thing that's kind of really interesting in management science around asking for help is this idea of dormant ties. So when you ask people for help that you know really well, like if I ask Jack for help, I know him really well. We have a high level of trust, right? If I ask someone brand new for help, someone that I don't know very well, such as Allison Cribb, I don't think I know you, you're in this webinar. We'd have a lot to talk about too, because there's like novelty, excitement. We'd be like really getting to know each other as people, as camp professionals, right? You're both potentially likely to help, but a dormant tie is someone that I've previously had a close relationship with, but I haven't really connected with for a long time, so months or even years. And asking dormant ties for help is a great way to get help, because you have a high level of trust, because you have that foundation of the past relationship, but you also have that novelty because you haven't connected for a while. I did like a random, like, tiny startup a couple of years ago during the early pandemic to train pod leaders. And I called so many old dormant ties, and they were all incredibly helpful. It was so cool. I called someone I went to student council camp with in like literally 2004, who now runs a preschool incubator in California. He talked to me on the phone for like 90 minutes and connected me with a bunch of different people. And it was just really amazing to see the test of dormant ties in reality. So in summary, you have to ask for help if you want help, right? And people aren't going to think less of you if you ask them for help. They actually might think more of you, and they're 50% more likely to help you than you think. And you don't just have to ask your like best friends and family and coworkers for help. There's lots of people that might be new to your life or were in your life previously who are actually willing to help. They just have to be asked. So Jack, going into the summer, who would you ask for help?
Well, April has me thinking. April in the chat says, I always struggle to figure out what to ask for help and how to delegate to others without having to do too much work in order to pass it off. And I totally agree. That's my big hurdle for delegating too, is like, if I can just do it faster than I can explain it to you, like, I'm just going to do it. And sometimes I overestimate how fast I can do something and underestimate how long it takes me to ask, or something like that. But so April, an idea I'm thinking about is, I'm imagining that this summer there will be hopefully a little bit less, but likely still a like staff mental health concern, like that's been maybe higher than in 2019, whatever. Like I think it'll be maybe, my guess, and who knows, is that staff mental health will be a little bit healthier than 2021, but not maybe as healthy as 2019, painting with a broad brush. So knowing that, what can I do to, maybe give a little bit of love to our staff? That's not going to totally solve that problem, but like maybe give just some appreciation, right? So I think like when I feel gratitude, I feel better. Like when I'm feeling gratitude, I feel better. So if that's a problem that I'm seeing, how can I ask for help to try and solve that, right? And how can I do it in a super easy way? And so now that I've said all those things out loud, one thing that I feel like could do that is, what if my alumni staff that aren't at camp anymore, that care a lot about camp, could write a letter to individual staff members at Stomping Ground, just thanking them for what they're doing, maybe setting up a time to talk. I don't know exactly what I could do. I could pass that whole thing off by having a 20-minute conversation with Kenzie Barron, who has worked at Stomping Ground for a long time. She's amazing. She's not working at camp this summer. I could call her and say, Kenzie, if I send you a list of all the current staff and a list of all the alumni staff with their phone numbers, could you make pairs and have people write individual notes or set up texts or whatever? Will you figure out how to do that? Kenzie would be able to figure that out, right? Like, that's like a 20-minute conversation, and maybe realistically, knowing the Stomping Ground setup, maybe a half an hour of tracking down all those emails and phone numbers and things like that, right? So in an hour, I can maybe make a pretty big impact on a couple of people's summers, because they're excited about what they're doing, right? And it's done minus for me. I don't care what, like, I already trust all of the old staff that are in the list. Like, they're already awesome people. I know that. So I know that they're going to kick ass at whatever this is, right? So I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's done minus. I'm like, hey, will you do this thing? And it's gone. What I wouldn't want to do is have all those people ghost write a letter and then sign my name at the bottom, right? Because, like, I wouldn't trust them to do that, because I would want it to come from me, right? So for me, it's about, like, picking what I can delegate and what I can't, what I'm willing to have be done minus, so that I can pass it off my plate. Also, I haven't talked to Kenzie in months, so she'd be a dormant time.
She sounds great. Perfect candidate.
You can follow her on Instagram. She lives in Tennessee.
Great. I'll look for her. I also think about, like, different tools that you can use for delegating and asking for help. So Paige, who works with us at Summer Camp Society, uses Loom videos a lot. So instead of having to explain something she wants us to do a million times, it's basically like a screencast. So she records the steps you need to do something. Jack and I use Google Docs a lot. So if we have an idea, we type up all the steps in a Google Doc, or everything we think, and we'd use comments back and forth. So if I'm going to delegate something and I might want to delegate it again next year, is there a way that I can kind of decide once that I'm going to delegate it and then write up the steps, so that next year when I delegate it, or if the first person I delegate it to doesn't work out, I have that recording of me explaining all the things, or I have that Google Doc protocol written out, right? So it's, like, a lot easier to ask for help in a clear way once you have some of the bones behind it. So sometimes the investment in setting that up just takes it's a little bit of a startup cost, but then it's worth it, in the long run.
And Kurtz, one of the things you do really well that I think helps with delegation is a lot of times you don't care how things get done, right? And so you always say, the goal for this is, and then you just explain it, right? So, like, for my last example of staff appreciation, is like, the goal for this is to help the current staff feel better and connected to past Stomping Ground staff. And then I don't have to, like, then Kenzie might come up with 300 better ideas, and I don't have to know about them. They just will happen, and they're cool. You know what I mean? So starting with the goal, so folks know, like, why we're doing it or whatever, I think helps with delegation. And it's something that I sometimes forget, because sometimes I'm just like, hey, will you move this picnic table to there? And it's like, the picnic table might not actually need to get moved. They might have a better solution. We could just have a different table, like, whatever. But if I say the goal out loud, then, and I don't care how it gets done, then I can get out of the way faster. Sometimes I do care how it gets done, and I've got to give step-by-step instructions, right?
The tune-up.
Kurtz, I need a tune-up. Look at this hair. It's disgusting.
So long. I noticed that was so long. You just combed it back, so it didn't look so long, but
it's disgusting.
Oh,
and I need a personal tune-up. Help me.
You need a personal tune-up. Well, if you're leaving for camp for the summer, it's certainly not going to happen unless there's an emergency. Pre-camp, we're thinking now's the time to schedule some time away for some certain things, right? The dentist, Jack's going to get a haircut. But what are some other ways that you can kind of, like, feed your own soul and your own, like, connections to being a full human before heading into the summer? We've been talking about, like, spending time with family and friends before the summer. We could say that now, like in the spring, I really want to spend some time with family and friends, but what does that actually look like? How do you make that happen instead of just having it be like a goal that may or may not come true? So we thought about, like, could you make a list of 10 people that you know that if you talk with them or hang with them, you will feel great. You'll feel better. And can you kind of have a goal to talk with all of these folks sometime before summer starts? You know, maybe you're on a train ride somewhere and you can make a phone call to one of these people. Maybe you set a time to go out for a drink or a walk with a friend, but like actually kind of setting some goals for having some personal time with friends that you're not going to talk to very much at all or at all this summer can help you stay more of a person in the spring.
Make a list of 5 things for your personal tune-up and then get them done. Put them on your calendar. If they're not on the calendar, they're not going to get done. Meeting rules. Kurtz sets a meeting rule for the spring that meeting has to be less than 30 minutes. You got to figure it out. You got to get it done. Another meeting rule is make sure we're not going to have a meeting unless there's an agenda this spring, right? The agenda can be brainstorm, it can be whatever, but it's less than a half an hour. There's an agenda, and maybe you could have a meeting rule that it's no more than 4 people, unless, and then you can break your rules however you want, but like set some really specific rules that let you get more done, because you know that if you're stuck in meetings, you're not going to be planning staff orientation. You're not going to be writing the emails ahead of time so you don't have to do them when you're stressed and the parents are arriving, those kind of things. But set some meeting rules so they don't take up so much time on your calendar. It's so annoying that calendars like automatically set meeting times for an hour. For me, I'm like, I need most of the time 15 minutes. Let's just get it done and get out of here. Another meeting rule for me is it's a phone call, not a Zoom call, unless it has to be a Zoom call. That lets me not need to walk all the way back to my office. It lets me take it wherever I need to be. It lets me walk around. It lets me do so many things, right? So for me, that is really important. It lets me get a lot more done. So if you want to talk to me, let's have a phone call. Let's put 15 minutes on the calendar. If we need more time, we'll come back to it. For Kurtz, she needs an agenda, and it's got to be less than 30 minutes.
And if you're hiding, you can't go to the meeting.
And a lot of times I don't need to be at the meeting. You're going to do great.
You'll just be hiding. Write it down before bed. So this is maybe like old school advice, right? But if there's something keeping you up in the middle of the night, just like have a piece of paper by the side of your bed and write it down. So don't store it in your brain while your brain is trying to rest, right? Like let that piece of paper store it instead of you, right? Like or put it in that app or a note on your phone or however you do it. But I think a lot of the times I'll be sitting up like outlining something in my mind, like how that talk is going to go about how you get fired at camp, right? And like before I know it, I've laid there for like 75 minutes and I don't even have anything to show for it, but I've just been playing it out in my head. So thinking about writing it down, letting paper store it, not your own brain, is just important.
And this is like, if you want to, Blinkist or Lucid are the 2 book apps that let you read the books in short sprints. Thank you to the folks that said that. I think Sean said one, and then somebody else said another one in the chat. So thank you for that. But in getting things done, which I highly recommend, reading like a 1-page article about what it means is a way of like thinking about how to process things. And the idea is that you want your mind to be like water and get those ideas out of your head and onto a piece of paper, onto something that you trust, right? Like I'm sure you've all had your computer, like you open like a video editing software and the internet and Word and whatever, and your computer starts going like, and it seems like it's gonna explode because it's trying to do all those things. It's trying to use up all of its RAM. Well, our brains only have so much RAM as well, right? So like, as we try and remember that we've got to do this, and we're coming up with this, our brains start to overheat like that, right? Like our computers in our heads are vibrating and going wild. And so how can we build a system that we trust we'll remember to come back to? Mine is not perfect. I email myself. Then it's in my email. That becomes a problem that it's in my email. but I know that I'm going to check my email. I know that I'm going to do my email, right? So that for me, that's what I do is I just email myself, because if I write it down, I might lose that piece of paper. That doesn't work for me. Other people that works for, but build a system for yourself. Kurtz.
Ooh, Karen says, I tell Alexa to put it on my to-do list. Clever.
Whoa, I am not that cool.
Wow,
I
wow,
love
wow,
that.
wow, wow.
But
All
Kurtz,
right.
I need a vision for the summer. What happens next? Where do we go?
We go to camp. It's almost time. So I think, in the spring, like it's that to-do list, right? It's your brain is exactly what your computer is probably doing right now, what Jack just described. So thinking about our sense of purpose, thinking about why we're doing all these wild things that we're doing right now will give us the motivation to continue. Have you ever gotten to camp at the beginning of the summer and you're already tired? Right? Like I've definitely arrived for the first day of staff training and I'm already exhausted, right? And I still have the whole summer in front of me. And one of the ways to kind of combat that, yes, it's asking for help, it's delegating things, it's satisficing. It's also thinking about what makes you happy. You could work 100 hours a week in any sort of position, right? But for some reason you chose camp. And there's a difference between working 100 hours a week or however many hours, wild number of hours you're working for camp versus for anything else. So I think spending some time while you're hiding, recentering on your sense of purpose is really critical. So one thing that I like to do before the start of summer, and I'm attached to my computer, so I can't go get it right now, but right over there, I have a very large bin of all of my camp stuff, right? And to me, there's something like almost spiritual about going through that bin, like reading those old notes from campers, looking at pictures of myself when I was a camper. I just had one over here. Oh, here it is. That helps me understand like why this industry is my industry and why it matters, right? So I think actually spending some time on doing that or spending some time doing that is critical.
Wait, Kurtz.
What?
Kurtz, here's what I want to say. We're running a little bit out of time, but Janae's in the chat, and I just saw that she went on this awesome, it was like a women's retreat on a cruise. It was incredible.
Oh, I saw that too. I was so jealous, Janae.
And then our friend Jessie Emmons just graduated from getting her MBA, I believe, and then she like celebrated by going to Disneyland or Disney World, the one in Florida, and like just like really. What my takeaway from this is listen, you're basically graduating from an MBA program, from a PhD program. You're accomplishing something amazing just by getting through and kicking ass this summer.
Right.
So this spring, what I encourage you to do is figure out something that you can do next fall and just get it on the calendar, book the trip, whatever is going to be awesome for you, something to look forward to next fall, like get it set up. So I know it can be a staycation. You don't have to spend that much money. I know Kurtz is really pushing this thing. The Summer Camp Society is going to be running an after party to try and solve for this problem, where you can come drink beers at Stomping Ground in September and hang out with a bunch of other camp directors that are going to be doing this. Listen, come and hang out with us. We'll have a great time. I'm not pushing that. I'm just saying that's trying to solve for this idea that we've got to get through this summer. We got to kick ass this summer. And one way I think to help us through that is to know that in September, there's going to be something a little bit dramatic that we're going to do to take care of ourselves. And whether that's having, going to a party or sleeping on a beach, whatever you need, like think about it now, spend a half an hour and just book the damn flight. Or, you know what I mean? Or put it on your calendar that you're not working September 13th to 16th because you're staying home and reading a book. You know what I'm saying? Like just chill. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just like find some ways to enjoy yourself. Kurtz.
I am pushing the after party. I'm so excited.
Chris Reese-Dupin is making wine for the after party as well. One of them is going to be called Kurtz, I believe. I don't know. What? But Kurtz, there's one more thing. This is 10 hacks. And now I'd like for you to shill a little bit and explain why the Summer Staff Power Pack is also very helpful.
You see I put a QR code on there?
You put a QR code. That's amazing.
Knock that in. So we are hosting a series of seminars on Zoom for your seasonal leaders. So these could be folks like counselors and training directors, or your health officer, or your waterfront director, your head counselors, your registrar. That gives you like a little taste of summer camp society, and gives your summer staff some leadership skills that they could really use going into the summer. So one of the big challenges with being a camp director and training your camp directors is that, or training your leadership team, is that they have very different jobs, and they're often working in isolation because their jobs are really unique to at your camp. So the Power Pack is a series of custom webinars that we've created just for your different types of seasonal leaders, where they can learn leadership skills that are very specifically applicable to their roles, and where they can connect with other leaders from other camps that have similar roles, so they build a network and don't feel like they're working so much in isolation. And we've created a discount code just for people that came to this webinar, where you can get $150 off the Power Pack. So you can mix and match 20 registrations in these 10 different webinars for your team. So we think this is like the best staff appreciation that you can give them, by giving them like a solid foundation to the start of the summer. So you can scan the QR code if you're interested in learning more. But I think, Jack, doesn't that code expire on Friday?
It does, on Friday. This Friday.
Okay. Well, if you want the deep discount, register soon. But we're really excited. So Chris Reese-Dupin is presenting, Nelson Strickland, Jack, myself, Allison Crable, Allison Klee. So we have a great lineup of presenters, and it's going to be a ton of fun. And we love meeting seasonal staff. They're the best. So we're excited to meet everybody.
Listen, here's the thing. This summer's going to be really fucking hard. I promise.
It's true.
It just is. It's going to be really hard. Take care of yourself over the next couple of months. Do some things now to set yourself up for what's going to be probably a really hard summer and a really important summer. You're going to kick ass. You're going to get to connect with kids. You're going to have awesome staff. You're going to make an impact. You're going to change. I think you're going to change the world, right? Like, you're going to inspire this generation of kids that are coming to your camp to be the people that they want to be. They're going to connect with people that they never would have met any other place. They're going to see the world in a way that they've never seen it before because they're out in nature for the first time, or they're going to do so many amazing things, right? You're going to make that happen this summer. Not enough of them are going to thank you. So thank you right now. We are thanking you for what you're doing, and they really appreciate it too, even if they might not know to thank you right now. So you're awesome. Keep kicking ass this summer. You're amazing. We miss you. We love you.
Thank
Kurtz?
you. That's it.
Boom!
Woo!
Kurtz, I love fun, just for the record.
Me too.
We will send, Allie, we'll send this out in an email once Kurtz gets it uploaded to YouTube today or tomorrow.
Today. It depends on how
Today.
my
Whoa!
No.
Okay.
That was like today ? It depends on how heavy my computer's breathing in a little bit. We'll see. We'll see.
My brain's breathing pretty heavy after that. So
yeah, we haven't done a webinar for a while, Jack. Like, I feel like I need to stretch out.
Probably need to drink like 30 cups of coffee after that, right? What?
No, I would literally die.
All right, y'all. Thank you. I'm gonna
Great
end
to
this.
see everybody.
I'm gonna end this webinar. It'll kick you off, but not because we don't love you, but just because it's over.